Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam. Welcome everyone to day 3 of SBV Yoga Mahotsav, International Yoga Therapy Convention 2022. Let's begin by invoking the Guru Parampara and the tradition that enables us to take everything forward. Om Tad Paramparaye Vidmahi Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruh Prachodayate. Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Puduvai Kalaimamani Puduvai Shakti Yogacharini Amma Ji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani Guru Mata Ki Jai. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome all of you to this magnificent celebration. And today, a special welcome to our highlight speakers, Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan Avagal and YogachariniSangeeta from Italy. It is indeed very special to have our dynamic future maestros with us, people who have spent many decades of sadhana and now starting to share more and more with so many around the globe. It is a great honor to have this type of event where we can all come together, share and care, because sharing is caring. So with those introductory remarks, I would like to welcome everyone to this event. Thank you for being with us this morning. And today we have as our first speaker the most amazing Dr. Mj Rahman. I have known Dr. Jayaraman for close to a decade now. And I believe our first meeting was at the Vaishnav College in Chennai, where an event organized by KYM was there. And we had such a beautiful start to the relationship and have followed it through his time as Director of Research at KYM, and then now as Director Division of Textual Research in Yoga, Indic Academy in Bangalore. Dr. Jayaraman is one of those rare human beings who is capable of understanding what our rishis had in their mind when they composed these amazing texts. Because to understand the texts of yoga, you need to be a scholar on one side, understanding the Samskrita. You have to understand the traditional Indian culture of Sanatana Dharma. And then you have to have your own sadhana. And he has all of this. Plus his expertise in our own beautiful divine language of Tamil also, and his skills in English make him an excellent example of someone who can share the traditional knowledge in a way that the modern people can understand in a language that they speak. And recently, I was so honored, he sent me his manuscript where very, very innovative manner, he has translated the Shatta Pratyahara into Tamil with the Jyotsna commentary of Brahmananda. And I asked him, is this the first time? He said, no, 100 years ago, somebody also did it. But I said, 100 years ago, the way language was used, even Tamil, and the examples we would give are so different. So I would consider his Tamil version that is going to be released soon. And I have the honor of penning a short forward for it because of his love that we share for the language, for yoga and all. And I'm looking forward to this message being taken to people who would otherwise miss it out. So without standing between you and Dr. Jayaraman, he is here to give us a beautiful talk on the culture of Samskrita textual study. So even the Samskrita textual study becomes a culture, and how this is a vital value addition to yoga therapy, or as we have been saying since day one of this event, Yoga Chikitsa in its Purna Swarupa. So over to you, Dr. Jayaraman sir. Welcome, and the screen is all yours.
Namaste, Dr. Professor Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani ji. I'm really honored to be part of Yoga Mahotsav of SBV International Convention, and that too to be invited by you. I was just thinking, how should I commence my talk? So then this example came to my mind, Dronacharya and Ekalavya. You are a Dronacharya and I am an Ekalavya. Though I have not directly sat under you and learned aspects of yoga from you, but you are sharing the copyleft sharing that you do. So I have learned a lot from that. So to be very honored in a way to be invited in the convention being organized by you. So I commence my presentation with a Shanti mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I will share my screen now. Please let me know whether the screen is visible in the presentation mode.
It's coming up.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So the very theme of the entire convention is about keeping up the cultural ethos in yoga therapy. So I also thought I should add my own little knowledge, whichever I have understood. So in this direction, so I chose this topic, the culture of Samskrita textual study, a vital value addition to yoga therapy. Now, before getting into this, the meaning of the word Sanskriti, that is the culture. So when I use the word culture, and Dr. Anand has also spoken a lot about culture, culturally appropriate yoga. So this will be a right opportunity for me to present my views and try to understand whether what I'm speaking makes sense. So hence, so I would like to, I see the word culture, try to represented by the word in Samskrita. The original word is Samskriti, and that is represented, we try to represent it in English as culture. Now, how do I understand culture in the context here, in the context of yoga therapy, yoga practice? So yoga, so there are three terms, Prakriti, Vikriti and Samskriti. So Samskriti is the word for culture. So what is Samskriti? What is Samskriti in yoga therapy? So in that context, we will see, my understanding here is yoga is a Prakriti for all of us. Whoever have assembled here, by nature we have taken to yoga. So Prakriti here may be taken as the nature. By nature we have tended to practice yoga, try to find solutions to the problems of us and people around us through yoga. So we have taken to it. That's our Prakriti, that's our nature. And if that Prakriti, if we follow it in the right manner, so that yoga is Prakriti, and then if we do it in the right manner, then that Prakriti becomes a Samskriti. our yoga becomes Uttama yoga. From whatever yoga we are doing, we would always want to do it in a better manner. From yoga to Uttama yoga, we would want to move. So from Prakriti to Samskriti, we would want to move. If we don't make an effort to move from Prakriti to Samskriti, there is a possibility that we may get distracted to Vikriti. So the various distractions, diversions, dilutions that happen may be called as the Vikriti. So when in yoga, from Prakriti, our attempt should be to move towards Samskriti. So that is from yoga to Uttama yoga, we would like to move. Everyone would want to add some value to what they are doing in the current way. So in this regard, there is a shloka in Vyasa Bhashya. Vyasa himself, the primary commentator to Yoga Sutra, he states, Agamena, Anumanena, Dhyanabhyasa Rasena cha, Tridha Prakalpayan Prajnam, Labhate Yogam Uttamam. So from yoga to Uttama yoga, if we want to move from yoga, Prakriti to Samskriti, Uttama yoga, there are 3 steps. 3 components are very important. Agama, Anumana, Abhyasa, Rasa. These are the 3 components. When we clarify our intellect with these 3, Tridha Prakalpayan Prajnam, when we clarify our intellect with these 3 components, Agama, Anumana and Abhyasa, Rasa, then Labhate Yogam Uttamam. So we move from yoga to Uttama yoga. That is the guidance we get from Maharishi Vyasa. So then we understand that the Samskriti of yoga, the culture of yoga comes through 3 aspects: Agama, Anumana and Abhyasa Rasa. These are very common terms in yogic parlance. Many of us know the meaning. Agama is authentic textual study, the wisdom that is handed down to us through the tradition, taught to us by our gurus. So that is Agama. So that is one important arm which leads us from yoga to Uttama yoga, Prakriti to Samskriti. The second aspect is Anumana. Anumana is the knowledge that we receive. We subject it to reasoning, both analytical, scientific, empirical reasoning. So then we process it and we try to understand it, verify it for ourselves in a better manner. So research. Anumana can be called as research. Agama is authentically receiving the knowledge. Anumana is subjecting it to our understanding process through the analytical activity, inferential activity, experiential, explorative, scientific activity. And not only yoga doesn't end with that. Abhyasa rasa. It's not mere abhyasa, abhyasa rasa. Finding the joy. Rasa is finding the joy in doing the abhyasa. How does that joy come about? When we take a liking to it, when we try to inform our practice through Agama and Anumana, it will lead not merely to abhyasa, it will lead to a real bliss, Ananda. So that rasa we can get by abhyasa when our abhyasa is informed by Agama and Anumana. This is how our acharyas have given the method to move from yoga to Uttama yoga, Prakriti to Samskriti. So this is what is culture in the context of yoga that I understand. There may be multiple interpretations, but I am giving a specific, I'm using a specific framework from Vyasa's commentary to look into the meaning of culture here. So as the title says, the culture of Samskrita textual studies in the context of yoga therapy. So we can see that Agama. So I'm going to focus on the first step in this Agama. So that becomes an important tool in helping us slowly move towards Uttama yoga or Samskriti in yoga. And this importance of textual study, especially in Samskrita, has been confirmed in other place also by sage Vyasa himself, the primary commentator. He says that Swadhyayat yoga masita, yogat swadhyaya mamane, swadhyaya yoga sanyuktya paramatma prakashate. So Swadhyaya and yoga should go together. So in this context, yoga refers to the understanding and practice of yoga, and swadhyaya is the study or grasping the wisdom, the textual and also traditional wisdom of yoga. So that swadhyaya and yoga practice should go together. Swadhyaya yoga samyukta paramatma prakashate. That is the path to attain the Paramatman. So hence, so by the study, practice becomes transformative, and by practice, study becomes insightful. So in this way, we can see a very strong emphasis by our traditional acharyas to look into the agama dimension or the textual study dimension of yoga, which is predominantly in Sanskrit. Of course, in other languages also, we find, especially in Tamil, being in Tamil Nadu, among the Tamil community, we see there are Tirumula, Tirumandiram and such other Vinayaka Ragavala and such other texts, very insightful texts. But predominantly we see that the Samskrita texts are the ones we see which are popularly studied across the country with regard to the agama of yoga. Now let's focus our this thing to the therapy dimension. So the importance of agama for yoga was seen when we speak about yoga therapy more than the philosophy. Of course, the texts like Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Yoga Vasishtha, all are rich in philosophical insights. Now the convention is more focused on the therapeutic dimension of yoga. So in that therapeutic dimension of yoga, how this agama is helpful, how this culture of textual study is important. We know that as serious practitioners of yoga, basically in a certain level, asanas, pranayama, kriya, bandha, mudras, all these are the critical tools. Of course, dhyana is also there, but basically these are the kriya components, active components of therapy with which we can directly help the care seekers in yoga. So in these, I'm just going to focus only on these dimensions of yoga, how an agama or the Samskrita textual study will be more useful in informing us better about those practices which we would want to use as tools to help others through yoga therapy. So these are the 4 aspects which I would like to cite examples here and there to show the efficacy or the importance or the significance of textual study in these 4 aspects. Now, the first aspect is, of course, asanas. Now, I'll right away, without going into examples. So I prefer discussing with examples rather than speaking about this thing. I'll just cite examples. One of the important sutras on asana in Yoga Sutra is Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapattibhyam. So that is 2.47, just after Sthira Sukham Asanam. After that, we get that sutra, Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapattibhyam. And interestingly, one of the very revered authors on Yoga Sutra, George Feuerstein, he says that all kinds of fanciful explanations have been proposed for this aphorism. Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapattibhyam. And as we know, this is a very critical sutra. It is related to asanas. And if we understand the techniques of asana properly, only then we can implement it in the practice, and it has implications on how we teach about asanas to the care seekers. So now, why Feuerstein says this about this sutra, fanciful interpretations, is the word Prayatna Shaithilya. Even in this sutra, I'm not going into the Ananta Samapatti aspect. I'm going to speak only about Prayatna Shaithilya. In this Prayatna Shaithilya, what is the meaning of Prayatna Shaithilya? Generally seeing Prayatna and Shaithilya. Prayatna is effort and Shaithilya is slackening. So the slackening, by slackening the effort, so it is an instrumental case, means by Prayatna Shaithilya, asanam becomes sthira and sukha. So that is how the sentence is complete. By Prayatna Shaitilya and by Ananta Samapatti, asana becomes Sthira and Sukha. So it becomes an instrumental, Prayatna Shaitilya becomes instrumental in making asana Sthira and Sukha. So this is the place where confusion starts. So normally to achieve a particular goal, sorry, to achieve a particular goal, we have to intensify efforts. We have to make our efforts systematic. And it is not by slackening the efforts, we achieve something that we desire to achieve. So because of this apparent confusion or the apparent lack of clarity, how do we slacken the effort and attain Sthira Sukham Asanam? Probably this might have led to whatever means all the fanciful expressions as Feuerstein would want to put it. So that might have come in. So the problem is, if one just digs deeper into the commentary literature, this apparent contradiction or apparent problem will be solved. But now, unfortunately, we don't find time to go into the commentary as to what Prayatna Shaitilya's intended meaning in the context of Sthira Sukham Asanam comes. I'll give you one problematic such interpretation in one of the commentaries which says a new edition and translation and commentary with insights from traditional commentaries. This word Prayatna Shaitilya has been explained as, you can see as in I have rounded it off. So the practice of asana at first involves a level of pain at first. After a time, this disappears by complete relaxation. Shaitilya into the pose. This is the popular edition which is currently read by one and all. Now the problem with this is is a commonplace knowledge. Now even for jogging, even for running, even for cycling, whichever physical activity we do, initially my legs will pain, my hands will pain, and later as I get used to it, then I will not feel as if I am running or jogging or I am walking. What is there in this? What is the technique in this? How is it instrumental in making the asana Sthira Sukham? That doesn't come through. So this is one example for a fanciful interpretation as highlighted by George Feuerstein. Now, what do the commentaries say on this? Now let us focus on that. There are, when we consult all the available Samskrita commentaries to this Yoga Sutra, we see three types of interpretations to this word Prayatna Shaitilyam, and all these are complementary to each other and very insightful and also very practical. It is not that they speak from some utopian perspective, very practical ideas which are given. One idea is this Prayatna Shaitilya technique has to be done or kind of it should be incorporated before the practice of asana. According to Vijnana Bhikshu and others, Bahuvyapara Nivaranam. So Prayatna is Bahuvyapara, Shaitilya is Nivaranam. So before I commence the asana, I should not exert myself physically too much. For example, the yoga hall is in the 4th floor. I run through all the 4 floors and then I pant and immediately they say stand in Vrikshasana in one leg. Will I be able to stand? Impossible. I will be. So Vyasa himself says, if Bahuvyapara, after doing a lot of exertion, immediately if I start asana, it will lead to Angamejaya, trembling of limbs, which is right opposite to Sthira Sukham. So Vijnana Bhikshu says, Prayatna Shaitilya is a protocol that should be remembered before the commencement of asana, that start your asana practice having relaxed yourself. So that is Prayatna Shaitilya, relaxation of any exertion before the practice. That is essential technique. That is an essential teaching that is to be remembered to start asana. So this is the interpretation of Prayatna Shaitilya before commencing the practice of asana, which will make the asana Sthira Sukham. Then we see Vachaspati Mishra, Hariharananda Aranya and Sadashiva Brahmendra, they give an interpretation of incorporating Prayatna Shaitilya during the practice. I am in the process of moving my feet, hand, etc., my limbs, getting into the particular asana. So in that context, during the practice, also we can apply this Prayatna Shaitilya. Then what is the meaning of Prayatna Shaitilya in this context? Samsiddhika Prayatna Shaitilyam or Anya Prayatna Shaitilyam. Means while I am doing the particular asana, Shaitilya, I should slacken. Samsiddhika Prayatna. Samsiddhika means casual effort. Just like I am sitting in a sofa and watching a TV. There, am I aware of how my body is? No. So that is a casual effort. So that casual effort should be slackened. Just like we don't focus on how we sit on watching a TV or reading a book, such kind of casual efforts should be avoided while doing an asana, which means that we should be careful about what are all the steps that have been advocated to achieve, say, Padmasana. So the crossing of the legs, placing them on the opposite thighs, keeping the spine erect, chin down, eyes closed, shoulders relaxed. So these are the steps. So I should not do any, I should not do it in a casual manner. So a casual effort should be slackened. So, and also Anya Prayatna Shaitilyam. In this process, I should not add unnecessary steps. So that is Prayatna Shaitilyam, or those steps which may not be helpful. So such efforts should be avoided and strictly following the instructions given for that particular asana. That becomes Prayatna Shaitilya. And there is a third interpretation to Prayatna Shaitilya given by Shankara and other commentators, where they say that asana bandhottara kalam prayatna karanat. So even after the configuration of a particular asana, say the Padmasana or Virasana or Vrikshasana, after reaching that posture, I should not make any further movement. So Prayatna Shaitilya, Prayatna effort on reaching the particular asana, following that steps after reaching that particular posture. Shaitilyam means not doing any further movement, holding myself in a still way. So because the very nature of the body is constant movement, as Krishna in Bhagavad Gita would say, nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrit. Not even for a moment, this human body-mind complex will stay still. So it has to be reminded. We have to be reminded that you do various activities to reach a particular configuration of the asana. Then after that, pause your activity. Stay there. So on reaching the particular asana, slacken all other efforts. Just try to be still. So this is the third interpretation to Prayatna Shaitilya. So which is after reaching the particular posture, also on reaching a particular desired destination of the asana, also Prayatna Shaitilya is remaining still by slackening any further activity. So when we consult the Samskrita commentaries, a beautiful flow chart emerges. So before practice of asana, Prayatna Shaitilya is avoiding strenuous work. While practicing asana, Prayatna Shaitilya is practice with full focus, following all the steps that have been advocated and not being casual in one's effort. And then after reaching the asana, staying motionless and feeling that posture. So that is Prayatna Shaitilya. By all these things, we can see so that before commencing asana, when we do Prayatna Shaitilya, trembling in the body will be avoided. During Prayatna Shaitilya, when we focus on the steps advocated, distraction and interruptions are avoided. And after reaching the posture, it is a human nature to constantly move. That flow of movement is to be paused. Only then that sthiratva and sukha can be experienced. Pause and experience the sthira and sukha state of asana. That is Prayatna Shaitilya. So thus we can see when we bring together the insights from the commentaries, so all these lead to absence of trembling of limbs, and absence of trembling of limbs is what is sukha and sthira. So this commentary literature in this way pervasively, it's not fanciful. You would agree that this interpretation is not at all fanciful, and the instrumentality, as I said, by prayatna shaichilya. So by remembering these 3 steps, the asana will help. And then, and again, we can see that the 3 interpretations that we see from the commentary are not at loggerheads with each other. They just coalesce with each other. They go with each other. They complement each other in presenting. And of course, I know, I hope all of us will agree that these are practicable. We can practice it, and it is not philosophical or utopian. And of course, these are on the therapeutic. So in the practice of therapy of asana, then when we remember all these basic aspects about the asana practice itself, before commencing, during the practice of asana, on reaching the particular posture, certainly the value, when I speak of value addition, this becomes, I hope, a useful value addition to the practice of asana itself. It applies to any asana that we do. These 3 basic. When the therapist or the teacher gradually incorporates these insights into one's practice, then naturally these teachings will radiate into those care seekers also, thereby improving the quality of the therapy also. I have other examples also to present on asana, but I'm aware of the time restriction. So I am moving to an example from pranayama. So we saw one example from asana. Let's move to another example as to how textual study of the Samskrita text are useful value addition to the therapy. This example that I normally present, from the standard example that I give about pranayama, is this shloka from this Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the 18th shloka in the 16th, in the 2nd chapter on pranayama. We see yuktam yuktam tyajed vayum, yuktam yuktam cha purayet, yuktam yuktam cha badhniyat, evam siddhim avapnuyat. So this speaks about the fundamental principle of how to inhale, how to exhale, and how to hold the breath. The shloka merely says Tyajed vayum, exhale. How? Yuktam yuktam. And then purayet, inhale. How to inhale? Yuktam yuktam. And then badhniyat, hold the breath. How? Yuktam yuktam. So normally what do? We read the shloka. Many times we don't have the patience to read the shloka. So we immediately go to the translation. So what does the translator say about yuktam yuktam, which is repeated for inhalation, hold, and exhalation? The translator says one should gradually exhale the breath, gradually inhale it, and also restrain it gradually. And that is how siddhi is obtained. And then we move ahead. So the point is, so the Mula Shloka also says yuktam yuktam. Following it faithfully, the translator also says gradually. So then we have to descend to the next level as to what exactly is gradual, or what exactly is yuktam yuktam in inhalation, exhalation, and hold. Then the commentaries hold the key in explaining what is yuktam in inhalation, exhalation, and hold. So vayum pranam yuktam yuktam tyajet rechana kale shanai shanaireva rechayet na vegataha ityarthaha. That is, while exhalation, the fundamental principle that should be remembered is it should never be hurried. Shanaihi. Exhalation, as a thumb rule, one should remember that exhalation should always be slow. No urgency should be shown while exhaling the breath. So the commentator, Jyotsna commentary, states that yuktam in exhalation is shanaihi, slowly. We know that to bring about that relaxation response, the exhalation should invariably be slow. So that is the right way of exhalation. And then the yuktam in inhalation, yuktam yuktancha, na alpam, na adhikam purayet. In inhalation, what is yuktam? Na alpam, na adhikam. So the same yukta here refers to not the pace, but the quantity. How much should we inhale? Neither it should be more, beyond our capacity to inhale, nor should it be less what we can hold within. So the point is the appropriate quantity of inhalation of air that should be done. So here it is not the pace in the inhalation, it is the quantity. And then yuktam yuktam cha badhniyat. In holding the breath, what is the yuktam? The commentator says, jalandhara bandhadi yuktam badhniyat. So always holding the breath, normally as we see in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, is always holding within only, not exhale hold. It is always inhale hold that we see in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So we see that when we hold the breath, it is not that we merely cease breathing, it is retaining the breath with the three bandhas, Jalandhara bandha, Mula bandha, Udyana bandha. When we add these three bandhas to our holding of the breath within, then that is the right way of holding the breath, not merely holding the breath within by just a notion. No. So that we see that inhalation refers to the quantity, exhalation here should be slow, and holding refers to holding the breath with bandhas. So these are again fundamental basic rules which need to be remembered, whatever be the technique. Be it Surya Vedana, Ujjayi, Sitkari, Shitali, whatever be the technique, these are pervasive rules that should be remembered, and this insight comes from the commentary. And as we can see, these commentators have poured their experience. It is not that they sat and meditated, of course, or thought of it or cooked it up from somewhere. They didn't cook it up. Their own practice has helped to document their experience. Hence, these are very practical, documented experience, precious. That's why Agama. Why do we respect Agama so much? Because these are precious teachings that we get, and very practical and very important in the context of the practice. So these are very fundamental. And so the mere gradual will not make or will not do justice in the translation of Yuktam. When we go into the text, explore more, then we are very sure. So this also gives a sense of confidence. We are very sure as to how to inhale, how to exhale, and how to hold the breath. So in this way, this also gives a sense of confidence in the practice. So yes, this is a wisdom that comes from the past, and hence let me incorporate it without any hesitation. When there is a confidence in practice, then of course we are certainly to attain the siddhi, as has been stated. Evam hatha siddhim apnuyat. Siddhi will be achieved through this. Again, I have more examples for pranayama also, but I move to the kriyas. In the kriyas, let us see one example for dhauti karma. Dhauti is again a very important cleansing activity. Among the 6 shat karmas that are mentioned, dhauti is an important activity. So there you see the verse Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It prepares a person for the pranayama practice. For those who have medas and shleshma in excess, medas and the fat and the kapha in excess, for them these shat karmas are advised. So we just take example of one karma, that is dhauti karma. What does it say? Chaturangula vistaram hasta pancha dashayatam gurupadishta margena siktam vastram shanair graset punah pratyahare chaitat uditam dhauti karma tat. The translation is there on the screen for you to read. So dhauti is slowly swallow a wet piece of cloth, 4 fingers broad and 15 spans long, according to the instructions of a guru, and draw it out again. This process is called as dhauti. Now, slowly swallow. So there is a mine of information in that slowly. When we consult the commentary, what is slowly? Is it a slow motion? In slow motion, should we swallow the piece of cloth? Now, when we see the commentary, we see that shanaihi mandam kinchit grase. So slowly, of course, means yes, non-hurriedly. That meaning is also there. So we have to do this act of swallowing a pure, clean, white, wet cloth. Slowly, the pace should be slow. The Shanaihi word also means kinchit kinchit, little by little. Little by little. We should not thrust a bunch of cloth into our mouth. So that also indicates not only the pace, also about the quantity of the cloth. The commentator further says, Dvitiya dine hastadvayam, tritiya dine hastatrayam, evam dinavridhya hastamatradhikam graset. What happens is that first day, slowly swallow the cloth, which means on the first day, swallow the cloth for one hasta, one span. On the second day, when you get into the practice of dhauti, swallow 2 spans of cloth, because 15 spans of cloth is there to be swallowed as indicated. So every day when we do this dhauti, add 1 more span of cloth, 1 more arm's length of cloth in the process of swallowing. This is one important idea that comes out of the single word Shanaihi from the commentary. Additionally, the commentator, this is the practical experience. He says, Tasya prantam rajadanta madhye lagnam kritva. After swallowing, the end of the cloth, pranta means the end of the cloth. The entire cloth has gone in, the end of it has to be bitten through the front teeth, and then Nauli karmana udarasthalam samyak chalayitva. So the verse says you swallow and then take it back. But the commentator says swallow it gradually, increase the quantity of the cloth day by day, and then finally when you are able to swallow the prescribed quantity of cloth in the prescribed manner, after swallowing, don't immediately draw out the cloth. Do the Nauli karma. So this is not there in the Mula Shloka. We get it in the commentary. So after swallowing the cloth, do Nauli and then draw the cloth out. So this additional information of doing the Nauli as part of dhauti is from the commentary literature. So the meaning of the word swallow, little by little as day progresses, and also doing Nauli as a middle central core component. See, the very act of cleansing may not happen if we simply introduce the cloth and withdraw it. So when we send it in and then do the Nauli and then draw it out, the cleansing process for which the entire activity is there, that becomes full. So all these intricate, minute, considerate, because the commentator is very concerned about the practitioner. See, if the commentators are not concerned, they would not have gone to, this is the karuna. When we say the rishis and our ancient yogis are very karunalus or kripalus, this is their compassion, that they have left all these practical details and observations for us to sit, study, understand, and then incorporate in the practice. So I gave an example about asana, then pranayama, then we saw one example on kriyas, and then we quickly go into the mudras and bandhas. One example for mudra and one example for bandha. Sir, if time permits, I'll just give these 2 examples and then wrap up. So yes. Then the mudras. What is the, you see a mudra here, everyone knows that this is the Maha Mudra. It is Maha Mudra, and we see that it is in the Wikipedia, it is translated as the great seal. Maha is great and Mudra is seal. So that's how we see the Maha Mudra being translated. We don't know whether it is a great seal or great walrus. Let us see. What is the meaning of the term mudra? The commentators again give us the meaning of the term mudra, how to understand the word. See, there is a superficial meaning. If you consult the dictionary, of course, they are right in calling it a seal, whoever has given the meaning. Because if you enter it into any Sanskrita dictionary, you will get Apte dictionary or Monier-Williams or whichever dictionary, you put the word mudra, you will get the meaning seal only, because Raja Mudra and all those meanings are there. But when in the context of yoga, is mudra merely a seal? What is the, so we always should be aware of the discipline in which a particular word is used. It cannot be used in the general sense. The word guna, for example, in Sankhya, guna refers to sattva rajas tamas. In Sankhya yoga context, it is sattva rajas tamas. In general, we say, he is a gunavan, means he is a virtuous person. That meaning does not apply here in the Sankhya yoga context. Similarly, when we use a particular word in the general sense, should we use the same sense in the technical? So that's why this is a technical field. So then what is the meaning of the word mudra in the yogic context? We see the commentator giving the explanation. Maha kleshan maranadin doshan mudrayati shamayati iti Maha Mudra iti vyutpattihi ityarthaha. So what is mudra? Mudrayati shamayati. So mudrana or mudra here refers to that which pacifies. So it is not that which seals, but mudra here in this context of yoga, it pacifies. Whoever does this can overcome the doshas, the various kinds of doshas, including the kleshas, the marana, and of course all the vata pitta kapha. All these are also pacified to a great extent. So hence in the context of, so the translation should be not the seal, it should be the pacifier. So that which the great pacifier would be the right translation rather than the great seal. Hence the very purpose. So see, when again what happens is when you use the meaning of the seal, then what happens? There is an urge to seal our limbs, a kind of force. There is a himsa that comes into the practice. That's the problem. So whereas when we say shamayati, then we know that, oh, it's a gradual process. By this, I don't torture myself into sealing various portions of my body. My objective is to pacify the various problems at the level of klesha, at the level of the doshas, etc., like the vata pitta kapha. So then I will not torture myself. So this gives a right orientation as to how I should practice. The very translation or the very etymological derivation that is given in the commentaries gives us the right direction, right orientation towards the various practice, especially like the mudras. So this was the example on mudras, and then finally the bandhas. This is the last example. I will not trouble you more with explanations and examples. I'll just give the last example because I should touch all aspects of yoga therapy, like asana, pranayama, kriya, bandhas. In all these dimensions, there is something from the commentaries which we can absorb and integrate and incorporate so that it adds value to our self-practice and also in the teaching of therapy. Then we see about the Mula Bandha. Let's see the example of Mula Bandha. We know that everyone is aware of the process of Mula Bandha, drawing the anus. So adhastat kunchane nashu kantha sankochane krite madhye paschimataneena syat prano brahmanadigaha. So all the three bandhas are mentioned by which the prana is directed into the sushumna. All those descriptions are there. Especially in Mula Bandha, when we draw the anus upwards. So this is the general constriction and then pulling it up. So that is how we do Mula Bandha. The commentator merely doesn't leave us by merely describing the technique. He goes a step further. He says that how do I know that I do my Mula Bandha correctly or wrongly? Am I doing the Mula Bandha correctly? Or am I making mistakes in doing Mula Bandha? The commentator says, Mula Bandhastu samyak ajñātaha nānā rogotpadakaha. Without getting the right kind of teaching or initiation into Mula Bandha, if I do that Mula Bandha, then it leads to, rather than overcoming problems, nānā roga. Many rogas will manifest if I wrongly do Mula Bandha. Then how do I know that my practice of Mula Bandha is right or wrong? The commentator, that's why the compassion of the commentator comes. He goes further and explains, Yadi Mula Bandhaha Kritaha, Yadi Mula Bandhe Krite, Dhatu Kshayaha, Vishtambhaha, Agnimandyam, Nadamandyam, Gutika Samuhakaram, Ajasyeva Purisham Syat, Tada Mula Bandhaha Samyak Najñataha Ityarthaha. If you observe 5 kind of experiences on doing Mula Bandha, Just like certain laws of the vital constituents of the body, dhatu kshaya, vishtambha is constipation, agrimandhyam is the metabolism has gone down, nada mandhyam, nada is not our ability to articulate or speak properly, and also the inner nada, so that nada does not manifest properly, and the excreta is in the form of the excreta of the goat, small balls of excreta. If that is observed, then there is a problem with your Mula Bandha. If you observe all these components after a kind of considerable practice of Mula Bandha, then there is a problem with your Mula Bandha. Go and learn from the teacher. On the other hand, Dhatu Pushtihi, Samyak Malashuddhihi, Agni Deeptihi, Samyak Nadabhivyaktihi, Yadi Syat, Tada Mula Bandhaha Samyak Nyataha. So if on the contrary, there is a free bowel movement, there is nourishment in the body, the voice is very clear, and then the Jataragni is very healthy, you can receive food, assimilate it properly, all these things are working fine, then it's an indicator that your Mula Bandha is proper. Hence, see, this is the extra length or extra distance that the commentaries go in clarifying as to what is the right way of practice, what the practical details of these various yogic practices, and hence this highlights in each of these practical components of yoga, which are very integral to the practice of therapy, the textual knowledge carries a lot of the culture of textual study is very important. But what is the current situation? It's very, to say the least, it's very difficult to say about the current situation of Sanskrita studies in yogic context. People get master's degree in yoga, but how much is the Sanskrita component? And I heard that certain universities offer master's degree even without teaching Yoga Sutras. So that is the certain situation. Even in certain traditional institutions, we see that training in English for communication is given, but training in Samskrita. They say that, oh, you get trained in English so that you can communicate the yogic wisdom better. But the foundation is training in Samskrita. Get trained in Samskrita, you can unearth the yogic wisdom better. Then naturally, as the Vedas say, if the tree is full of bloom and blossom, naturally bees will get attracted. So inform yourself better in Samskrita, then naturally all those who are desirous of the real knowledge will come. No need to worry about that. Of course, English education is important. English training for communication is important, not at the cost of Samskrita, which is very critical, as evident from the examples that I have humbly placed before you. And also we see not many certificate programs, workshops, or special groups in yoga universities on textual aspects of yoga. And then even in, because there is a rush in gaining that yoga teacher's degree in 200 hours, 150 hours, and etc. Of course, Samskrita will take a beating in those contexts, and the quality of yogic teaching will have a kind of suffering. And with the context of research, in the context of Samskrita textual research in the context of yoga, it's a very weak point in India. There are only a couple of institutions like Kaivalya Dhama, which has a philosophical textual research department. Apart from the empirical research, it is such institutes, and of course the Kupuswami Shastri Research Institute. There only one or two names come to my mind when we speak about textual research in yoga, but it is not the case abroad. Many universities have established chairs and they run multiple year research projects on Hatha Yoga, etc. So that is the situation in our country. So in yoga, lower criticism is needed. See, the Yoga Sutra has to be critically edited. Vyasa Bhashya and other commentaries are to be critically edited, and the right reading of the text has to be fixed. See, when I speak about all these inputs from the text, it is because that someone has did some critical edition in fixing. Yes, this is how Vyasa wrote it. This is how, by using all the established textual criticism methodology, lower textual criticism method, that itself is a science, a methodical approach. So that lower criticism ensures or secures the core text from the past. Then we do higher criticism, where as to what is the original contribution of this text, that is to be taken. That is second area which has to be given a great thrust. Institutions like CCRYN can look into this. Of course, empirical research dimension is very critical. Empirical research gets informed by this textual wisdom, right? So that also needs to be looked into. Adequate importance has to be given to that. And there is another huge gap in textual studies, that is translation of the yogic wisdom into regional languages, especially the Yoga Sutra, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. All these texts are there in Samskrita, and someone gives a lecture in English. Unfortunately, I am also giving a lecture in English here. So to see the real masses, when we have to reach out to the masses, so when we adopt the regional languages, when we translate it, make lucid adaptations, come out with pamphlets and booklets in regional languages, that's when yoga reaches the roots. So that is again a huge area where again work has to be done in the textual aspects. And of course, when there is some controversial comment, etc., which is not akin to the cultural moorings of yoga, there is no one to respond, because no one is informed, or not many are informed about what exactly the texts say. For example, we saw the example of Prayatna Shaithilya. Someone has written a book, published it, it is circulated widely, and even it is used as a textbook. But no one is there to say that there is a problem with this translation. So when all these are given the right kind of importance and association, or kind of importance and the thrust, then we can say the roots of yoga are secured. And then when the roots, see, it is to the roots that we put all the fertilizers, water, manure, etc., are offered to the roots. If the root is well nourished, then of course the fruits and the results will be magnificent and beautiful. And hence textual aspect of yoga, this culture of textual study and research is very critical in helping us move from yoga to Uttama Yoga. And of course, there are practical solutions. Just I will take last 2 minutes. I will not take any time further. Last 2 minutes is I don't normally want to end with a problem. It's always good to give some suggestion that what can be done in this regard. There are certain works which have been taken. For example, there are yoga-specific, learner-centric Sanskrita textbooks which have come up. Just like learnsanskrit.online, where yogasya bhasha, the language of yoga. So you get 4-level textbook on learning both yoga and Sanskrita parallel. So I had the opportunity to work on this project. Now the video lessons, the books are all available in a subsidized way in this Learn Samskrita portal. So that's how immediately we can address this problem, or one step. If any impact, if my talk has made any useful contribution, means one can look into these sources for equipping oneself on the Samskrita side. And one more suggestion to all the policymakers, very senior people here, is to, as there is CEUs for various medical dimension aspects, there should be CEUs on textual aspects also, emphasizing on asana aspect, on pranayama aspect. So the language should be familiarized, chanting should be familiarized, word splitting, paraphrasing, inputs from the commentary. Short duration workshops can be supported by various institutions, well-established institutions, by which slowly we can inject this turn towards authentic, immersive and transformative absorption of yoga. So with these thoughts, I would like to end my talk and profusely thank Ananda Bhavanadiji for this opportunity, and all the listeners who have patiently listened. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jayaraman, for that excellent cultural perspective. And as you said, the Samskriti of the Samskrita in Yoga Chikitsa. That is how I look at it. And even without knowing it, you, with your last slide, gave an answer to a question from Ananta who had asked about these modern online Sanskrit dictionaries, is there really a use for them? And I think your answer would be there's a use, but within the context. And you have immediately given us the answer through the Learn Samskrita 4-book series and videos. So I think that's an excellent answer that came as soon as she was asking the question, you were giving that slide. So I really love that. And I think this is something that is a lot of food for thought. And I remember a few years ago, Dr. Jayaraman gave an excellent presentation here at ICYER, where he brought out the issues that come with wrong translations or semi-translations and all. And today he has built into the next level of it. And I think we will take up this idea of having a CEUs. I had to get around that term, CEUs, because I think there's a big demand, especially with those who are very sincere, that they want to know that how do we understand the Samskrita in yoga? Because as you said, it is very easy to get confused. And this is where we need people who can have the combination, as I said, who understand the yoga, who have the Samskrita, so not only the English skill to reach the international audience, but the vernacular skill to reach the local audience. This is why Dr. Jayaraman's upcoming book, which is a Tamil translation of the yoga, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika with the Jyotsna commentary, I think it is so important that these teachings have to reach the grassroots. At the same time, they also have to reach those internationally who are interested. And through such efforts, we then stand up. We stand up for what yoga truly is. Because otherwise, as pointed out, in Western countries, there's a huge amount of academia coming up in Samskrita with such mistranslations, either by ignorance or vested interest. Both are possible. So I think this type of talk goes a long way. Thank you so much, Dr. Jayaraman, for this excellent perspective. Always listening to you is a learning experience. And I learned so much from listening to you. So thank you for giving back through your sharing. We now go on to the second talk, which is by my dear Sangeeta in Italy. And yesterday we met in the evening and we were having a discussion about our current Nada Yoga course. And at that time, I said, have you prepared? She says, yes, I have all my alarms ready to get up in the morning. So those of you who are joining us from, the European time zones, it's quite early, and I admire Dr. Meena, who's up at 1 a.m. plus in the USA to be with us for this. I think this shows our commitment. So I'm not going to take too much of time before I introduce Sangeeta, because you all know very well that Sangeeta has become a leading mentor for the Gitananda tradition internationally. And the way she has been leading the Nada Yoga training over the past 6 months is exemplary. Her background in academia around the world, her background in music as a therapeutic and transformative tool, her studies in the lineage of the Gitananda tradition for so many years. I think all of this put together makes her a rare human being on this planet. And today she's going to be sharing with us about how listening plays such an important role in communication, healing in this context of Yoga Chikitsa. So over to you, Sangeeta, so that you get enough time to share your thoughts. Namaste.
Namaskaram, namaskaram, dearest Dr. Nanda, Professor Dr. Nanda Balayogi Bhavanani. What a great honor and pleasure to be here with you, sir, and with this really extraordinary Sangha of colleagues, mentors, teachers. Thank you so much, Dr. Jayaraman, for this wonderful presentation that fits so well with everything we do, but particularly with all of the teachings, because they were handed down to us in Samskrita. So truly thank you. And so I'm gonna go ahead and share my humble presentation. I have to say that there are some pretty extraordinary presenters who create the most amazing slides. I'm still in the maybe last century model of slide presentation, but hey, it's okay. So here we have just the title itself of the convention, Strengthening the Cultural Ethos of Yoga Therapy, would cover a good 3 years of study, I think, right there, because it implies that there has been a split or that there has been a weakening of the cultural ethos of yoga, because strengthening the cultural ethos implies strengthening the nature of yoga therapy or yoga chikitsa, bringing it back to its source. And as Dr. Jayaraman has very brilliantly exposed, one of the main reasons for that is a split between the traditional teachings, how they were actually culturally intended, and how we, in quote, use them today, the terrible verb of using yoga, doing yoga right outside of the cultural context. So when Dr. Ananda, you approached me for this convention, we shared the desire to illustrate perhaps, or share our love for listening communication, especially in a therapeutic setting. So, of course, my deepest gratitude to you, sir, the deepest gratitude to the lineage, the parampara of Yoga Maharishi, Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri, Guru Maharaj Ki, our beloved Puduvai Shakti, Yogacharini Ammaji, Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani, to you, sir, to your family, extended family, and the Gitananda family worldwide. Hari Om, Tat Sat. So Vishuddha, okay, let's begin by the subtle teachings, but then right immediately after, we'll go to the practical teachings, because we depart from the physical to hopefully get to the sense of the metaphysical. But what we see in Vishuddha is this Shuddha, the center of great purity, a purity that goes beyond what we can understand through our senses. And the element of this particular psychic center is Akash, space. So right away we understand that we are beyond the sensual, practical pleasures, the seeking of the sensual pleasures. Here we are in a center of great purity because of the refinement of the vibrations of the center. If we were to understand space outside of our solar system, how could we do it unless we have been to space, unless we understand the great quality of energy at the quantum level? So right there, we are faced with a paradox. I want to understand, and I want to feel, and I want to explain, I want to teach, I want to bring this into therapeutic setting, but do we have the refinement for it? It's very difficult and very humbling, because it's one thing to talk about it, one thing to truly understand it at the level of the buddhi, but we can only do our best. So what we do is that we bring the teachings to the physical, physiological, emotional, mental levels where we at least have a grasp, a little bit of a grasp, especially, as it was pointed out, if we were not born or raised in the culture of Sanatana Dharma. There's only that much we can do to get closer to these concepts from a different culture. So we just do our best. But the corresponding location of this very subtle psychic center is the area of our vocal apparatus here. More than that, in fact, it's the ears, the nose as it gets air into the vocal cavity, whole area of the throat. In terms of glands, is the thyroid gland, but there's the larynx here, the pharynx. In the back, we have the area of the medulla, where our great rishis located the aprakasha bindu. There's so much here. There is so much here. And I'm gonna, after this slide, we'll talk more about how fascinating this area is. The tanmatra is shabda, hearing. It's generally translated as hearing, but shabda is also intentional listening, which is the topic of what we'll share in a moment. And the karmendriya is vak. A whole series could be developed just to approach and honor Vak, a great Vedic divinity, not just the voice that I use. Again, the verb, I use my voice. We should really rethink all of this. But the Deva is Shiva Vak Vishuddha, the Nilakanta, again, the throat. And Darabija Hang. And in the Dalabija, these are all the vowels, very powerful esoteric teaching. The vowels comprehend and include all of the harmonics we can make with our vocal apparatus, from the A, guttural, all the way to the Ha. Anyways, it's a full journey. So generally speaking, when we simplify to a great extent the use of the Vishuddha in therapeutic setting, we may find translations and instructions as if this could be possibly understood from the sensorial level, which it isn't. But we can focus on specific teachings, like learning to listen deeply, just because of the tanmatra is shabda, learning to express oneself, hence learning, as Dr. Jayaraman was saying before, learning to listen, learning to understand the language of Samskriti, but also the language of the local population, which is something we will talk about in a moment, like the real appropriate language to use in a specific setting. Learning to refine and purify one's senses through the practices of Pratyahara, for example. Learning to adapt and change in communication. So these are some of the aspects we will share. Before we go into how to bring these teachings to a practical setting of yoga therapy, let's think for a moment about the throat and the neck. So many things are here, so many important psychological, physical, physiological elements are in this area. But also, here's the chicken and egg question, which I really love, except it's not a chicken and egg, it's a evolution / listening and vocal production question. So when you look at evolution of the human being, we were on all fours not so far ago. Then we came into a more of a sitting posture. And then in evolution, we began to ascend towards the sun, because we are solar beings on this planet, just like a plant. This is what we are hoping to do, hoping to be really solar beings, full of the warmth and healing qualities of our star, the sun. So we rise towards the sun, yes. And in rising towards the sun, we are now currently able, most of us, to be on 2 feet and stand up, sit up, right? Where do we go towards with our fontanella up here? Towards the center of the sun. And the sun is going towards the center of the galaxy. So there's this energetic pool. In this energetic pool, we developed the area of the Vakvish corresponding to the chakra of Vakvishuddha, of the Vishuddha chakra, by elongating the neck, which was shorter when we were mammals, unless of course you were a giraffe in your previous life. So that's a different conversation. But other than that, we developed a longer neck, but also a less strong neck. Why? So in this long neck, we were able to elongate our vocal box. So the positive of that is that we have a longer voice box now, and that has resulted in a much more intricate and intelligent system of vocal articulation. The vocal articulation is possible because our vocal cords are horizontal to, they're actually an amazing passage between what is above and what is below. That's maybe the topic of another conversation, but they're truly a gateway here between heaven and earth in a way. But the articulation of all of the muscles of the neck is possible because we are now standing. And here's the chicken and egg. Is it thanks to evolution that we developed our voice? Or is it because a human being knows how to use their ears and voice appropriately that we developed and rose up to our feet? Of course, I think it's the second one, but that's just my opinion, is that we were destined as a species now to be able to become aware of how we listen and how we use this amazing voice. Voice comes from Sanskrit, vak. So this is not just something we can use or abuse. Yes, we have divinity here in our vocal box. We have divinity in our capacity to express ourselves. So this is just to begin. So how do we refine, this is the topic of this particular presentation, refine active listening and communication? So we have active listening and communication. The two are slightly different, although they are integrated. First of all, to refine means to make it finer, to make it more elegant, more intelligent, more culturally aware. This is where the refinement comes in. There's no refinement unless it's a full-hearted expression. It does not matter how refined, well, it matters, but it's not so important how refined you are as a scholar or as a therapist if the refinement does not combine mind and heart. So this throat is right here. Interesting, isn't it? That this center of great purity connects heart and mind. It didn't have to be here. It could be somewhere else. We should be in awe of the fact that the Shuddha, this particular center, the corresponding physical, physiological part in our body, connects heart and mind, or brain and heart, if we want to be more anatomic about it. So how do we refine it? We refine it by active listening, and then how to communicate. So we begin with listening. Some of us want to communicate without knowing how to listen. This is not going to work. Of course, once we learn how to listen, we learn how to communicate. The more we communicate, the more we learn how to listen, and then eventually they become one. But at first, it is my experience as someone who brings the wisdom of yoga teachings in different cultural settings, senior homes, jails, and all, that listening is first. And listening to ourselves is first, even though it may sound very egotistic. Oh, you just listen to yourself. Well, you should. You should listen to yourself first before you attempt to listen to someone else. Because how do you listen? First, we want to bring yoga therapy and speech therapy, let's say, or listening to, let's call the people who come to you, your patient. People have different names, how they call their the people who come to them seeking for help, patients, clients. They're human beings. That's what they are. They're human beings who, just like any other human being, wants to be heard. They want to be heard. So the first thing we want to learn is, how do you listen? First of all, how do you listen to yourself? Research shows that the way we perceive our voice is very different than the way it sounds. This is because the way we listen to our voice inside of us comes from two different types of listening. One of them is through the outer ear. So you hear your voice in the air coming back to you through your ear. But as you vibrate your vocal cords, just like an instrument, just like a beautiful veena, yes, all of your bones vibrate. So the sound of your voice inside of you is deeper and also more charming, honestly. When you hear your voice recorded, instead, you don't have the bone transmission, you only hear your voice. And oftentimes you don't appreciate it, you don't like it. So the first thing that we need to do as yoga sadhakis and yoga therapists is to become acquainted with your own voice and appreciate it. Because you need to learn how to use the amazing harmonics of your voice to convey a particular message. So that's the communication I will talk about later. So first you have a responsibility, and as our Swamiji, Ammaji, and Dr. Sir remind us, to be able to respond to your voice. You cannot think that you're going to be effective in your communication if you do not know your voice, if you do not appreciate and study your voice. This is something like voice education needs to be part of the curriculum, in my opinion. And what do we hear? It's not just how do we listen, but what do you hear? So in order to listen well, we need to learn how to breathe well. And this is something that it was a revelation to me, coming from the teachings of the Gitananda Parampara and other studies. But I realized at some point that listening deeply is strictly connected to breathing deeply. It's going to be very difficult to listen well if you're not aware of your breath as you are listening in that moment. So as you listen to someone coming to you, first breathe. Learn how to breathe as you listen, because most of the times we don't. We think we listen, we think we're breathing, but we're not. It's fascinating. So that's the first, let's say, exercise or practice that I would like to share if you haven't thought about this before. So relaxation comes in, but because of time, I'll go into relaxation maybe later or another time. Okay, so once we listen, then we can communicate. First, we listen to ourselves. How am I feeling? How am I today? What am I listening? What am I able to listen? Are the voices inside my head so loud that I can't listen to this other person? I have a responsibility to calm down, to quiet down. This is something I need to do. In coaching, it's another, form of support for human beings. You always have to take 10 minutes before your session to check in with yourself. Always, it's mandatory. And, as nurses, doctors, therapists, mothers, fathers, we feel like we're always running out of time. So we go from one session to another, to another, to another. And it's very difficult to maintain this sukhasthanam, the sense of ease, to then support another. So of course, this is a much larger institutional conversation, is that the therapist really should be able to take some time between sessions, between family duties and work duties, to have a chance to recharge and restore. So that's another conversation, that doing less sometimes allows the person to be more present, be more of help. And so that's perhaps for another time, but let's continue on. Let's continue on for, again, the sake of time. So I wanted to give you some examples of what has worked for me. For example, in this work I did in a jail in Chicago, I keep bringing it up because it was such an instrumental learning experience for me. So before the session, even if we could just have a moment to check in and ask ourselves, how am I feeling now, physically, emotionally, but also what am I hearing in my head? If I'm hearing in my head, oh my God, I'm just so tired. Oh my God, I should call this person. Oh my God, I should do this thing. Then of course, it's going to be more difficult to listen to another person in front of you. What do I know about this person coming to me? Why truly are they here? Why are they here? Also, am I holding any bias that could distort my listening skills? Because if someone is coming to me and they are to this, to that, or I may have a cultural bias, even though I may not want to admit it, because I am a therapist, I am a yoga practitioner, I should not hold any bias, but I'm holding it inside. I know, for age, for disease, for color of skin, for culture, like caste, whatever it is. So this needs to be a pre-session check-in that is really important. Then you'll ask me, what has this to do with Vishuddha chakra? We'll get there. in a few minutes. Then during the session itself, yes, this is the Swami Gitananda's 4 layers of relaxation. So during the session itself, and what I mean by a secular setting will come in a moment, you can listen and relax together with the person, even though they may have come to you for a completely different reason, and you may have some, medical and yoga chikitsa models that you're going to use with the person. Maybe one of these could be there, at least one, where you're sure that you are listening together and you're expressing yourself together in a good way. So the jati is the letting go, the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika, breathing in, relaxing, letting go of tension in the body. The Sukha Pranayama, breathing in and out in a relaxed manner, listening to the breath. The breath comes in through the nose, travels through the oral cavity, travels all the way into the lungs, and as it comes out, it travels in the opposite direction, just apparently. But the ears, the nose, the mouth, the heart, the mind are all focused there in listening to this amazing breath giver of life. Then the Shatta Pratyahara is a practice by Swami Gitananda, where we listen to the sounds, subtle sounds coming from inside of the body, listening to the heart, listening to the breath, listening to the sounds outside of the body, stretching the listening under the control of the mind as far as possible, and then bringing all of that back, just from listening to sounds that are very far, to listening to sounds just around us, to listening to sounds inside of us, and then finally to attune to very subtle sounds whenever possible. This practice is most powerful. And then the giving over to the greatest higher mind with Om Japa or any other sort of, any other mantra that are possible in that context. So what I mean by secular setting is that sometimes, all the time, it is, I think personally, mandatory truly to do our best to learn Sanskrit, to learn the name of these practices, to learn where they're from, to understand the scriptures. I think too that this is not just a responsibility, but a great awe and beauty and pleasure, because yes, the Sanskrit phonemes are like portals of meaning and experience and learning. And it's just marvelous to learn them. Especially I began learning Sanskrit when I was in my late 30s. And it was a revelation. It was so beautiful. At the same time, when working outside, for example, of India or a cultural context where yoga is understood, I think there's a way in which we can still, while crediting the tradition and while making sure that everyone involved in that session knows how to find the teachings from the original source, always, at the same time, it is also possible to make these teachings available by simplifying them so that people can understand them and not shut off. For example, in the work I did here in Cook County Jail in Chicago, if I had brought in the Sanskrit right away, even if I had explained it very well, I would have not been able to be successful in my communication. So in the syllabus, when I did this work, I did it for about 4 years, bringing voice, storytelling, listening, communicative skills, intercultural communication, all of that. Most of the teachings I brought in, not all of them, but most of them were really truly springing from my studies and practice in yoga. And in the syllabus, I gave all of the information, the school, Ananda Ashram, ICYER, the website, the name of the parampara, the name of the gurus, All of that was there. And I did an introduction at first on where the teachings were coming from. But after that, I did what in the US academic circle is called secular teaching, meaning that I brought the teachings into the language that people could understand. So the language of a jail in the urban setting of Chicago. And the reason for that is this. What do I know about this person? Why are they here? What kind of communication do I want to have with them? But also, what are they going to be able to hear? What are they going to be able to understand? What do they need at this time? And so after the session, I also always had this post reflections and assessment. How did I feel during the session? What did I learn? How was I able to support the other person? What could be performed better? So this idea of swadhyaya, of me as a therapist listening to me, what do I need? Why am I here? What is my bias? What can I offer? And then communicating with the other, bringing the other person at the center of the experience. Communication and interaction come from the need, the desire, the hope to be one. Communication, communion, being one, cum, the other, being one with the other. And there's a great skill that is required by the yoga therapist in this particular context to be empathic, to feel, to listen to the other so that you can become one while maintaining healthy boundaries. In order to maintain healthy boundaries, my senses need to be extremely refined. This is a true practice. And it is another paradox because I may think, oh, the more emotional I am, the more open I am, the more I'm going to be able to be one with this person. Yes, except that at the end of the day, you'll be completely exhausted. There's nothing wrong with that. But emotional connection and emotional communication is quite exhausting. It's mammalian communication. It's quite exhausting. But there's a way that yoga teaches us to have a refined communication where I can be empathic, but I can also have healthy boundary and know how to recharge after each session. So to complete this and to go back to the beginning slide here. Okay, so we have discussed how to be present with the other person. So we begin by checking in with ourselves, checking our breath, checking how I feel physically. This is paramount. It's the beginning of everything because you are going to communicate through your mouth, through your hand gestures, through your facial expression. So all of the Annamaya Kosha level is going to be there. And you will meet people who will be able to meet you only at the physical level if they are in a lot of pain. They are their pain. And so it's going to be important for you to be aware how you can begin listening at the physical level first. Then the emotional level. The emotional level, the pranic level, are they exhausted? Are they overexcited? Are they so stressed out they can't sit still? So you will need to meet the other person at the energetic level. That is a much refined level than the physical, because you'll need to feel the energy, which you can't see. So you'll need to develop an intelligence there to listen to the energy. Then you travel up to the mind. What are they telling you really? Maybe they will be telling you something, but because they remind you of your mother or their grandmother or their children, you'll think they're telling you what your mother always tells you, and you will not listen to what they're actually telling you. Or they remind you of something else, or they are so attractive. You'll be like, oh, I don't know. Anything could happen. You need to be very, very alert, very alert at the mind level. And then finally, we get to hear. We get to something much more refined. Yes, we get to the space where heart, mind, and beyond connect, the Akash. What are these people that come to you in need of? They, like all of us, want to be taken by the hand to overcome the fear, the greatest fear, which is the fear of death. This is where in space, there's no more death. There's no more fear. So why do we talk about refinement here? Yes, it's not just an intellectual refinement. It's going beyond the fear of the lack of purity. Why is pure? What is not pure? Fear is not pure, because fear is ignorance. And so the person in front of us is afraid, like us. Like us, they're afraid to die. And the disease that they are here to share with us, because it's a therapeutic setting, ultimately, yes, there's pain. Ultimately, yeah, there's maybe shame. Maybe there's cultural inadequacy. Maybe there's all that is there in the lower koshas, right? But ultimately, this is what we are there to support them to be not afraid of death, not to be afraid of their own mortality. And so if we can remember that, that's where we travel in a more finer, refined quality of listening. Because ultimately that's what they want us to hear. I'm scared to die. And so we must also deal with that. We must deal with that. This is the teaching. So amazing teachings that may not be about yoga chikitsa, but for example, one of my absolute favorite, the Kathopanishad, always by my side, because that's the greatest teaching, self-knowledge. What is this disease teaching you? What is the self-knowledge that you can gain? So all of this is coming through this center for us by the way we talk, we engage, we listen, we communicate, the language we use, but also the non-physical language, the mental language. This is not just the voice. Vishuddha Chakra, it's not just listening and speaking. It's listening and communicating with all of ourselves, from the spiritual to the mental, to the emotional, to the physical. So with, sorry, thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks to my most beloved Acharya, Guruji, Dr. Nandaji, for allowing me to be here and humbly share from my very small loka here in Tuscany, Italy, with such distinguished guests here. So thank you, sir, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Marvelous, marvelous. You went way beyond what I envisioned when I discussed this topic with you. And I think the multiple layers that we need to address in order to be an empathic listener, empathic, active, compassionate listener, and not only listen, but then what we listen gives us part of an understanding of then what can be done for the person who has come to us seeking care. I think this is where, if we want to be a competent caregiver, then we need to develop this active listening, compassionate, active listening. Because if we don't listen, we don't know where they are, we don't know where they want to go, and we will not be able to know how they can get there. The whole principle of Yoga Chikitsa, based on the Heya Hetu Hana Upaya principle, is you have to start with what is the problem, what is the root of the problem, where can they go, and how do we get them there. And for that journey, it all starts by listening. And the way you tied it all in, I have to say I was chuckling when you talked about long-necked giraffes, because we have our in-house joke of the giraffe asana we created in South Africa many years ago as part of a trick on the students who came to class after we had visited all the big four in their place. the emphasis on connectivity was well brought out by you. And I loved your statement that in space, there is no death and no fear. I think that was for me the highlight takeaway from this, because when we open up to that Akash, we realize that at the subtlest layer, there are no differences. There are no differences. If there are no dichotomies and dualities, how can we be afraid? How can we fear? What is there to lose? It is only when we feel we are different that we have something to lose. So that I felt was a gem of a universal Pragyaloka wisdom that came through you. And to have our group here in the Zoom womb, and at the same time having the multiple listeners who are watching on our YouTube channel, I think this is really wonderful, the way we are looking at the context of Yoga Chikitsa in a much bigger perspective, which was the goal behind this convention, that we come up with a series of videos through all of these talks, a series of material through it that could become a teaching tool for those who want to understand the context of Yoga Chikitsa. And I think we are definitely on that path. So I would like to thank you, Sangeeta, for accepting to speak and giving such a wonderful fodder for thought. I'd like to thank Dr. Jayaraman, who has again given us a beautiful context, because Yoga Chikitsa will be Yoga Chikitsa only when it's within its context. And how do we find that context? That is what we are all trying to find through this 8-day program. And thank you all for being part of this. And Subbu Bhaiya has made a comment on Shravanam in Bhakti Yoga, which is so true. The whole process starts with Shravanam. And without Shravana, there's no Manana and no Nididhyasana. So the importance of active listening for our spiritual journey, and for us to not only help ourselves, but help others. And another key element that I heard today was you have to first listen to yourself. You have to listen to your own being so that you can train yourself to listen to others. And I think also by listening to others, you train yourself to listen to yourself. So it's again, by serving others, you serve yourself. And by following your Swadharma, which is the service to the Atma, you are also going to serve others. Now, serving the ego is the problem. So how do you serve the Atma without getting caught up with ego service? A self-service should be for the self, the Atma, not for the Ahankar-based ego, which is a byproduct of avidya. So, wonderful session today, and looking forward to having more such sessions over the next week. So do join us, share the good word, and let's all grow and glow in yoga together. We will close at this point. Om Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you. Nandri Vanakkam.